Hey, it's the Wrestling Matt. I am Matt Camp. Thanks for being with me as always here at the WrestlingMatchShow.com. If you're a Matt member, you know you're getting this one live. And if you're not, you're catching it the next day via podcast, the Friends or Believe Network. Subscribe to the Wrestling Matt podcast, wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe here at the WrestlingMatchShow.com. But yeah, you're going, wait a minute. I could have heard this already? Yes. For those of you that are Matt members, you're here with me live right now on this Wednesday after we did our Dynamite review. We're talking NXT and WWE on this episode. But if you become a Matt member, you can get things like this. Sometimes I decide to do a couple shows in a day. Decide to go earlier than normal. Sometimes even extra days worth of content for you. But you can do so by becoming a member at the WrestlingMatchShow.com. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Subscribe where you get your podcast. Head over to ProWrestlingTees.com/TheWrestlingMat to go get your Wrestling Mat merch. Our good friend Nerdy Dude posted about that. Good to have him here. Good to have you guys. If you do get a Wrestling Mat shirt, please send it to us on social media at WrestlingMat23 at the Matt Camp. We'd love to see how it looks, whether you're wearing it or don't want to be on camera, just showing off the shirt. Please send it our way. We'll make sure we repost it on our social media. Thank you for supporting the show in any way you can. So, with two shows on Tuesday night, we already covered Dynamite. If you didn't catch that earlier today or whenever you're watching, you can go back and watch it at thewrestlingmatchshow.com. Let's move in, though, to NXT. Here's what I want to get to on the show today. How the show opened, the celebration for Trick Williams. Why I thought Trick got way more out of interacting with Jey Uso versus how things went down with CM Punk last week. We'll get to that moment and what was now established for the future in NXT as it relates to the championship. The big NXT specifically promoted matchup, the biggest matchup they were promoting, other than obviously the Randy Orton appearance, which was a one-off, and we'll get to that, was Tony D'Angelo once again challenging Obafemi for the NXT North American Championship. Tony does come away victorious. What was accomplished in that match? Did they do what they wanted? And where does it leave both men going forward? We'll get into that. I mentioned the main event, hyped for weeks. Javon Evans, who has, in the grand scheme of things, moved quicker than most signings to NXT over the last couple of years. Signed quickly to television, has made an impact multiple times already, has probably lost a little bit more than you would like, but in a very promising sign for his future, they wanted to get him in there with Randy Orton on this second episode of NXT on CW in Randy's hometown, region, whatever. And they wanted to put that spotlight on Javon Evans. Did he get the most out of that? Did he take advantage of that spotlight? Do you look at him any differently? Was it handled correctly? Was it the right way for the second episode of NXT on CW to go off the air? Because they used that losing performance to insert him into the triple threat match alongside Ethan Page and Wesley to determine the next contender for Trick Williams' NXT Championship. But the imagery, I had an issue with. We'll get to that. And something else that isn't necessarily NXT related on a weekly basis, but it was last night. Think of all the main roster talent that popped up on NXT over the first 2 weeks of the CW. Miz, CM Punk, Bianca Belair, Jade Cargill, Jey Uso. And as we have known for weeks, Austin Theory and Grayson Waller challenging Nathan Frazier and Axiom for the NXT Tag Team Championships. All of the main roster talent was presented in a big way with wins or standing tall or looking good or whatever it may be. Except for Theory and Waller. And they hinted at not hinted would be the wrong word. They showed more cracks within the team. And they didn't win the NXT Tag Team Championships. That miscommunication, the issues they had at the end of the match, made them losers on NXT last night. And one of the only main event acts that showed up to not really get a lot. Although, if you want to read into it, and we will, was it more of a exercise to further what could be coming for Grayson Waller and Austin Theory? I should note they were already in the ring, which is a wrestling verb if you don't know, last night. Did not get much with their entrance. Backstage, all kinds of stuff. Thought that was interesting. But what were your thoughts on NXT last night? As I said, recording this on Wednesday, live for the Matt members, everybody else getting into this on Thursday. What did you think? We're 2 weeks in. Something else I wanted to get into before I talked about everything else. I know they ran a much smaller building than last week. I know, and I liked how NXT was shot last week in Chicago. I thought it felt bigger. For those that don't know, and I think it got out there enough, but they were supposed to run more of a bigger arena for this second episode on CW in St. Louis. But don't forget, they were in St. Louis on Monday night. Did they price out people who already paid a pretty penny, I would assume, for Monday Night Raw tickets? They ran back-to-back nights. It's not like they were running a pay-per-view on one of those nights. They ran a Raw. They ran an NXT. I know they're hot right now, but I can't say I'm surprised that they had to move buildings. It's not, hey, it's WrestleMania week. We're running SmackDown and the pay-per-view and the Hall of Fame and Raw all in the same area and stand and deliver. Oh, no, this was episode 2. Yes, Randy was announced weeks ahead of time. I get that. But it was episode 2. There weren't a lot of major stakes on the show. And you're coming off a Raw, which is a follow-up after Bad Blood. But I will say, put all that aside, I loved how the show looked. I loved it. To me, and this is much easier said than done, because I could throw this out there and it's like, well, yeah, that would make sense, but it costs money. I would love NXT to be in venues just like that on a weekly basis. Now, when you run the same city back-to-back nights, you can use a lot of the same crew or similar crew or whatever. I have said, I had heard going back to last year, that there was an interest in taking NXT TV on the road. They have done that for the first 2 weeks of CW. They had a big crowd last week for NXT, 7,000, 8,000, maybe 9,000. I don't know the final number. And last night, while it was said multiple times on commentary that it was sold out, it was also moved to a smaller building, and I think they ran maybe 1,300 or 1,400 people in there. I loved how it looked. I loved the set. The ramp was a little weird in terms of it going down, but I thought they made the most out of that. I thought it looked like, hey, it's not Raw. It's not SmackDown. You know it's the third brand. You know it's developmental. We still care about it. But maybe the freshness of running a different, albeit not huge, building, not a Raw or SmackDown size building on a weekly basis, there's something to this. It's not the comforts, and believe me, people that you see weekly on NXT have gotten probably too comfortable in what they're doing in front of the same fans at the Performance Center every week. That's not on them. That's just how it goes. They're going to be back in there next week. What does that look like? What does that sound like? I love the building they ran last night. Now, as I've talked about, not easy, especially coming off of this weekend, to run a live show that many times in 1 week. Typical week, crew comes in for Raw, NXT might be a little carryover here and there, but like I said, they kind of have their setup done down there. It's not like you have to go set things up at NXT on a weekly basis. They've had to do that the last 2 weeks, but the Performance Center, they're show up and work. It's not a lot, to build or things like that. Get in place, sure, but it's nowhere near the build of a Raw or SmackDown. And then, of course, on Friday, you do SmackDown, and that's your typical week. Now, last week, on the road for Raw, on the road for NXT in Chicago, on the road for for SmackDown on Friday. Those that were in Nashville had to get to Atlanta for the pay-per-view. You're back at Raw on Monday. You're not in the same building on Tuesday, but you're in the same city area. It's a lot. Is there a way? And once again, this is about routing and trucks and production and obviously money and cost. Is there a way to get NXT to kind of piggyback off of wherever Raw is on a Monday, on Tuesday, and run a smaller venue in the same town or nearby so you can use some production staff and such? Maybe. That's still a third live show on a non-pay-per-view week every week. It's a lot to do. It's a lot. That's why you think about, back in the day, ECW on Sci-Fi was taped on a SmackDown day or aired the same. They got the most out of it because they had to. Now, that company is worth way more than they were back then, and they have more money to play with. But they're also, very obviously, have found ways to cut costs and redundancies and all that stuff. Are they going to make enough money selling 1,500 to 2,000 tickets that makes it worthwhile to run NXT on the road on Tuesdays? I don't know that answer. I think in a perfect world, yes, NXT would run a venue similar to what they ran on Tuesday night on a weekly basis. I think it's just big enough and it's also not too much. I don't think developmental should be in a 10,000 plus seat arena every week. But what we saw last night, it was a mix of, there's some Full Sail vibes there. There's some old school ECW, not WWE, but like old school ECW vibes with the kind of ramp and the entrance. Minimalistic compared to most WWE productions, but still big. It looked like a big indie show. But the video walls and everything and the lighting and looks, it looked nice. It looked toned down in a good way. It put more of the focus on the wrestlers. I love a wrestling show like that. I've talked about how often I think WWE is too glossy. I'm in the minority based on the money they're bringing in, the ratings and all that, and they want everything to come off big, and that's fine. It takes me out of it sometimes, but I loved the presentation of NXT and how it looked. It wasn't over the top. It had WWE polish. but still wasn't overdone. They made the most of that building. That's what I would say. I like that for NXT. So the beginning of the show, by the way, exemplified that perfectly. You ran a building with somewhere between 12 and 1,500 people in there. And Trick's entrance, first entrance in his second reign as NXT champion, still felt big. Still felt like, oh, this place is jam-packed. They're hot. They're fired up. And they are there for the guy, for the face of NXT, Trick Williams. If you just listened, simply listened, close your eyes and listened to Trick's entrance, it didn't sound like he was in a 1,500 seat building. It sounded like he was getting as big of an entrance as he would anywhere. I'm not saying it's WrestleMania-esque. I'm not saying it's a stadium. But if you close your eyes and just listened, you could have told me he was in Chicago still. Which is the biggest compliment I can give. Trick has all the tough stuff down. I think I've said that plenty of times. I still think he needs to be better in ring. I think that was on display last week. He's got to tighten some things up. I think, you want your finish to look like $1 million every single time. You want to know that you have your stuff down, your routine, your big moves. I still think he's tightening things up. I think he will continue to tighten things up, and I think he's going to remain down there, and you just want him working as much as possible. But you want to talk about a presence and capturing the people from the first note of your song and keeping them engaged after your music is over with your promo. He's got it. A great barometer of where someone is at is you have them open the show. You have them go out there by themselves. Whether they're a baby face or a heel, obviously Trick is a baby face. Can they do what is asked of top WWE stars? Can you go out there and cut a 10-minute promo to open the show? Whether you like that or not as the start to a show, it is a skill you need to get to the top of WWE. Trick has it. It was on display last night. Trick has never, whether it be on camera, off camera, he has never shied away from putting himself out there, from the spotlight. He did this, and I think at times, and it happened to me during interviews, outshined Carmelo. I think that was seen more and more as that tandem went. I interviewed them both multiple times. Trick carried multiple interviews. Mello even said once during an interview I did, he's like, you know what, I don't know what to say. I just let Trick talk. And Trick handled himself. That was a very telling line to me, by the way. And Trick has shown he has that presence. And you could send him to media appearances, and you could have him be the face of NXT. You could absolutely make it clear, as they did last week, which the writing was on the wall. We're debuting. It's a new era. Here's the guy. Ethan Page was out there last week because he was the right guy to relaunch Trick Williams with NXT moving to CW. And as we saw, not that it's a surprise, to open up the show on Tuesday night, the right decision was made. He is the right guy. And he knows, I love that he said, I know I have a target on my back, and this is what comes with it, and blah, 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 and I'll take them all on. Everything he's supposed to say. And he's got the crowd right here, right in the palm of his hand. And it gets interrupted by Wesley, which is fine. Wes coming off of the big street fight win. I thought he did a nice job in his promo. And he gets interrupted by Jey Uso. And if you want to talk about two guys who are so unbelievably over and have done so organically. Yes, they're getting the pushes, but it's the correct pushes. WWE wanted you to be 100% on board with Roman Reigns being the face of the company before people were willing to go with him and accept him as the face of the company. And they stubbornly pushed him far too long as a babyface and didn't help him with the promos and suffer and succotash and all that stuff. Sure, he was a main event guy. Sure, people liked him, but he didn't get to where he needed to be, which is where he's at right now. And look what had to happen. You had to turn him. It was so obvious that he needed to go the Rock route of, okay, we want to go with this guy. People rejecting him, turn him heel, and he will get over eventually as a babyface. It took forever to get to that point. And look what happened the last 3.5 years. And look where we're at now with Roman. That is not an issue with Trick Williams, and that is not an issue with Jey Uso. Trick Williams and Jey Uso are great examples of setting the place on fire when they walk out, but not losing them for a second. Some people have great entrance music, and they can't follow up on that. Like, they're always going to be over because of their entrance, and then the energy doesn't stay up there. Trick keeps the energy up there, and Jey Uso keeps the energy up there. That entrance last night was as naturally hype as it could be. Jay gives off those vibes. Jay in there with Trick. And watch Trick and Jay play off each other. And the yeets and the whoop. That, like, they adjusted. I watched Trick get into the cadence of the yeets. Okay. Could they have predicted that when they went through rehearsals? Yeah, they could have. But it's also Trick just listening. Let me change my cadence so they can yeet after each thing because they want to yeet. We're all together on this one. I'll play into them. Jey Uso going out there and talking about Wes and saying what he did and putting over Trick, very simply, nothing over the top, I think was way better than Punk's appearance last week. I think Trick got more off of that. It wasn't about Jay taking out Wesley. It was about Jay going, hey, Trick's the guy. I know what it takes to be the guy. I know what it takes to be a champion. And Trick putting over Jay and Jay putting over Trick. Very simple. Two baby faces who are certainly as over as you probably can be in their roles. Just soaking it up. Just having fun with the crowd. It's a nice rub for Trick. It's another example of how over Jay is. It makes sense that they're friends. It worked. It just worked. Hey, I like that guy. Hey, I like that guy. Oh, cool. They're friends. That makes sense. And that was it. They didn't overdo it. That was a key to me. Jay didn't overstay his welcome. Mission accomplished. But we also are left wondering who's next for Trick Williams. I loved it. Great use of Jey Uso. And Trick certainly showing he has what it takes with the microphone and with his entrance. So the big promoted match within the NXT world was Tony D'Angelo getting his rematch with Obafemi. And I think I've said plenty about the D'Angelo family and how I feel about them. And it's almost two different conversations because I've said I feel like the D'Angelo family has a ceiling because you bring that to Raw or SmackDown, people have to sell for them. And I mean their facials. I mean in their verbiage. I mean in acknowledging that, oh, these are the guys that might throw me over the, the bridge or the. It's hard to do that when you have the Bloodline out there and Judgment Day and even American Made of, or the Wyatt family of, oh, wait. I mean, shouldn't the D'Angelo family be the most dangerous because they're willing to go further? Are they really more scary than the Bloodline, just absolutely destroying people? So you have that hanging. Now, they're still in NXT, so people acknowledge who they are. But then at the same time, if you go, okay, I accept the D'Angelo family for what they are and who Tony is and all that, then they also play him as an underdog. But he's the Don. He's the guy. He makes stuff happen. He pays people off. He's got his own restaurant. He has guys take care of things for him. And then it's like a crisis of confidence. And I'm like, is he Robert De Niro and analyze this? I know they're basically mixing up a bunch of Rocky stories, and God knows they hit that over the head by literally saying he has the eye of the tiger when he got pissed off that Rizzo got pushed. It's tough, as I think people were behind it. I think he came across way better than he did last week. It was interesting on commentary that it was mentioned that maybe Tony took a calculated walk away from Oba. But the people were behind him. Now, I liked the match a lot. I think I would have enjoyed the match and the whole story more if Tony wasn't presented as the Don. Like, they're using the Rocky story, right? Rocky was always an underdog, though. And yes, he would have victories and he would get too big for his head and all that stuff. And he's got to find himself against, Clubber Lang and Apollo Crews or Apollo Creed, not Apollo Crews. They mixed all that stuff in. And I think there was a story to tell of someone who needed to overcome that. But he's still Tony D'Angelo. He's still the Don. Why does the Don need to find his confidence? But the Don, he wins. And he doesn't win with his finish. And he gets the kick out of a lot of stuff. And he battled back. And he wins with, a roll-up. And I don't have a problem with that. He was 3 seconds better than Oba. Yeah, just had Oba break the record for the longest North American Championship reign. And he got beat. He was just 3 seconds. It was a matter of 3 seconds. It wasn't a big finish. Oba was right up, shocked at the thing. He didn't go after Tony. They let Tony have his moment. It protects Oba. If they go back to it down the road, Oba could say, hey, you outsmarted me for 3 seconds. He has that out, and Tony could say he won the big one. Okay. Either Oba is going after the NXT Championship, or dare I say, he's ready. And I think he might be ready. He has everything, and I think he's ahead of Trick in ring. And I think they see how big of a deal he can be. The entrance is good. The walk is good. I thought perhaps last week he passed the final test. He sat on Miz TV, and he was This is not a knock on Miz, because as I said last week, Miz was playing his role correctly. Oba was the most important person in the ring last week when that was all said and done. Oba delivered exactly as he needed to deliver. Miz set him up. He knocked him down. Tony had his struggles. The crowd wasn't with him. Oba has passed all the tests. He knows exactly how to work for a guy his size. He knows how to use all his stuff. I'll admit I was wrong a few months ago. I think Oba is more ready than Trick. I would say I still think Trick has a higher ceiling. By the way, great problem to have, or, great situation to be in. I think Oba is more ready right now. He's shown he can deliver with multiple different kinds of opponents. He'll only work people better than him if he moves up. He's gonna do great work on Raw or SmackDown as soon as he gets there. And I might say he's ready. And dare I say, you bring him up soon and give him the Diesel spot in the Rumble. The Kane spot in the Rumble, whatever, the dominant spot in the Rumble. Because someone gets that every year. Someone who doesn't win but gets to stand out because of their performance, because of 7, 8, 9 eliminations. Maybe Oba debuts in the Rumble, and you have him do that. I think he's ready to come up because he will work with better people, and I think he is ready to dominate. And I think they could put him in a spot to do that, and I think he's already very over. And I think he's one of those guys that when you see him, you go, who's that? He gets you so fast. He captures you so fast. He is an airport test guy. He's somebody. Oba has that. Oba has immediate credibility when you see him. He is not going to be a tough sell to fans who haven't seen him. He is not going to be a tough sell when he shows up on Raw or SmackDown. He is going to jump off the screen just like he does in NXT. And whether it's Joe Tessitore and Wade or Michael Cole and Corey, they will take care of a lot of getting him over via commentary. I am sure he will get tremendous video packages. I am sure that he will step in the ring with people that he could throw around. I think he is one of those guys. I wouldn't do it for too long. But he is someone that if you bring him up soon, he could be heated up in a significant way so that when February 1st rolls around and Royal Rumble happens, Oba could have a big spot in the Rumble. Oba could be the kind of guy I see dethroning LA Knight for the United States Championship. Couple of comments there. Nerdy Dude said, I was surprised about the match. I honestly thought Oba would retain, but here's what bothered me about the win. With Tony D losing twice to Oba, now he's all of a sudden the champ. Hey, listen, they're booking Oba strong. I think there's more money in Oba, and they didn't have Tony, hit a big finish and win last night. I don't want to say upset him, but he was 3 seconds better. It keeps everybody protected. Nerdy says, it feels kind of weird to me. Do you think that at Halloween Havoc there will be a rematch for the belt? I don't think Oba loses twice. No. I either think Oba finds his way into the world title picture or he moves to Raw or SmackDown. And I'm leaning towards the latter. I don't think he needs much more in NXT. Just like I don't think Ethan Page does. Which brings us to the main event. So Randy Orton announced for weeks about being on this show. The match with Javon Evans we knew about. And I have said it's important to get the most out of these appearances when a main roster person is out there. Punk was on NXT for like 3 weeks. They got him involved with Roxanne. They got him involved with Pillman. They got him involved with Ethan Page. They got him involved with Trick. They got the most out of Punk. Randy Orton had a funny, but overall not much to it, backstage interaction with Nathan Frazier and Axiom. Hey, you got to find your dark place sometime, blah, 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 blah. Okay, just a little bit. Then he comes out for his match, and he's over, and blah, blah. And they did it after Javon, saved Sexy Red from Ethan Page. It doesn't seem like Ethan Page is going anywhere just yet, even though he did appear on Raw this week and was pleading with Adam Pearce to fix things. Javon Evans didn't get a lot on Randy, but he hit some big kicks. And he hit some big moves. And he bounced back from getting messed up on the table. So it was very much a put him down, get back up. Put him down, get back up. Put him down. All right. He was never going to beat Randy. That's a tough spot. Because Randy's far better than him. This was not John Cena and Kurt Angle on SmackDown. Okay? Randy controlled 75, 85% of the match. Javon got a couple of hope spots. And then, unfortunately, and this stinks, and this happened, they tried to do a spectacular RKO, which everyone thought would happen, and it didn't happen. They missed it. So Randy picked him back up, and I want to give Javon Evans credit for this. Randy picked him back up. They didn't try to do anything crazy. He just picked him up and, okay, we're going to hit that again because I didn't hit it on you on the way down. I'm hitting you with a clean RKO. And Javon Evans gathered himself and sold the hell out of it. And Randy beat him. And you knew it right away. Like, I was like, that stinks. That's a timing thing. And they showed it. Where Randy picks him up and you see Javon say, I'm sorry. And he goes, hey, it's all right. Don't worry about it. When they showed the replay, they didn't even show the botch. Okay. Now we cut to the back. And there's Ava talking to Wes and Ethan Page. Now, we've just watched Javon Evans lose to Randy Orton. Not a surprise. Not get a lot of the match. Somewhat predictable. Wesley's coming off a victory against Zachary Wentz in a street fight. Ethan Page just lost. Certainly has a gripe about Punk, as I mentioned. Former NXT champion. Okay. She goes, okay, you two guys, number one contender match. And based on his performance, Javon Evans is in it too. What? Oh, okay. And the next shot we see is Randy Orton doing the Randy Orton. So you have Ava say the guy Randy beat pretty handily showed enough to earn the spot in that triple threat. Do we cut back to the ring and see Javon Evans and Randy Orton still, this thing, and hey, good job? No. The third man in the number one contender match is nowhere to be seen. Because he lost. And he got dumped on his head with an RKO. This is what we see. We see Randy. So you're telling me that a guy who could be vying for the NXT championship is nowhere to be seen. Look at the effort he just put forth. Cut to Randy Orton posing because he destroyed Javon Evans, basically. NXT on CW goes off the air with Randy Orton posing. And we'll never see him in NXT probably for months and months and months. I have no problem with Randy beating Javon Evans. I have no problem with Randy Orton being on NXT. But not the way to set up a number one contenders match and make Javon credible. He's lost too much already. He's lost to what? Somebody from Gallus. He lost, to Spears and stuff. Like I like him. I think there's a lot there with him. I think he's exactly where he should be right now in terms of developmental and learning, and he certainly needs to get bigger. I mean, I think for credibility's sake, he needs to be a bigger guy. He looked very small with Randy. I know he's not Randy's body type. He is pretty tall, though. And he'll be fine. But if you want to go with him, present him better. Nerdy Dude says, nothing against Javon, but for me personally, he just does too many flips. I know he's a high flyer, but he's just overdoing it in my opinion. But that is just my opinion. Here's what I always say about that. It's what you do in between. How do you get to those big moves? If you can make that work, it makes those big moves and the flips matter more. It's the connective tissue. And that is just experience. That is just knowing how to get people in the right positions or be in the right position and do so more organically as opposed to let me turn around for the hard cam or let me shimmy over. Like, that's just using your footsteps the right way and making the most of them and slowing down. And I know I sound old. Go, slow down. I love flips. I love watching, Commander and Hologram. I'm going to be excited to watch Hologram and Beast Mortos at WrestleDream this weekend. But it's how you build to those big moves and what you put in between. I've seen that from Javon. He didn't get a lot of opportunities. It was a couple of hope spots against Randy. The kicks. Couple of reversals. And once again, I don't have a problem with that and how the match went, but I don't like that being used as the barometer or the reasoning for why he's in the number one contender match. That's what I think I struggle with. I don't think he was presented in the right way. It's one or the other. And they tried to do both. If he had gotten more of the match, if he had taken Randy to the limit, then I get Ava going, man, what he did was unbelievable. I mean, look how close he was to beating a 14-time world champion. He's in the triple threat. No problem. But he didn't get presented that way. And he wasn't on some ridiculous winning streak where even if he lost Randy, go, yeah, but he won all his other matches against NXT. And I don't think they did him justice knowing that they were going to put him in the triple threat. Thanks for coming, Randy. A couple other things I want to hit. I think someone mentioned, yes. The fatal attraction, toxic attraction, influence, fatal influence, attraction, toxicity. After last week, they set up the 6-woman tag match against Kalani Jordan, Bianca Belair, and Jade Cargill. Said last week, great use of the main roster talent, great rub. Happened again last night. One thing I will point out. Earlier, I talked about Trick Williams' entrance and keeping that energy up and get it being over with the crowd. And Jay has that as well. Kalani Jordan came out to her music that no one recognizes of, oh, that's Kalani Jordan. That's the NXT North American Women's Champ. And then after she comes out, because they gave all three of them an entrance, Jade gets her big entrance. Or her normal entrance, which is big. And you go, oh. And then Bianca comes out and she gets hers. And I went, there's the difference. Ethan Page has good music. When it hits, you know who he is. Trick has that. Joe Hendry has that. Where's Joe Hendry been, by the way? No appearances on the CW. Pretty surprised about that. Anyway, entrance music matters. Entrance music can add to a presentation in a very big way. that was on display, the stark difference between Jade and Bianca and Kalani Jordan. And I don't want to hear, well, she's in developmental, she'll get there soon enough. Other people in NXT have good entrances that make you pay attention and have calls and responses. She is a great prospect, babyface, probably the best babyface woman that they have, if you really think about it. That is from their system. Sure, they have Julia now. Sure, they have Stephanie Vicker. We'll get into that in a second. But in terms of like someone that they have molded and turned, it's her. But I don't want to see that on display of like, well, her entrance is nowhere near as good as these other two. After that, though, they all walk together. They're all dressed the same. They have a very solid match. And Kalani gets the win, which is exactly what it should be. Yeah, we have two massive stars with her. Yeah, they're helping. But she got the win. That was important. That came across well. Very good use. Wouldn't mind seeing her get invited to SmackDown or whatever as a friend of Bianca and Jade. Just another way to get some more eyeballs on her. I think that'd be a great idea. She comes to back them up. You know, Naomi's busy or taken out, whatever. They had her back. She could have theirs. And she still needs time in NXT, believe me, as she should. But good use of her. Nerdy Dude said, I think it's not just Kalani's music, but also her character, which is like bland. Yeah, what I will say about her, they're kind of letting her just figure it out. They haven't had her like lean into, you know, that high school backstage of, I don't like you and you're hitting on this guy and blah, blah. She's involved in that stuff, but it's, you know, she's kind of above it. And they, like I said, a great barometer of where you are. They put you on commentary. And you sink or swim. You got two people that should be propping you up or keeping you involved. And can you handle kind of talking on the fly that way? They've done that with her a couple times. They put her out there with Bianca and Jade in back-to-back weeks. She's handled herself well. That is a very clear indicator that they see something in her, as they should. But now it's about what you do after that. But she, along with Trick, probably got the most out of the first 2 weeks on being a CW and having the main roster rubs. Like, those two, deservedly and correctly so, because I've also seen them featured in a lot of NXT on CW social media type stuff. They see a lot in her. They're investing in her, in time, in the media appearances, in who she's working with, working against. You can see it. They see a lot in her, and there's no rush. As she figures out her character a bit more, she's probably someone who will be enhanced and evolving with a loss when that happens. You'll get to see more of her character. You throw some obstacles, you throw some adversity in her way. That fleshes out your character more. Right now, you know, she's basically great athlete, fun to watch. We're going to build this new title with her. And to me, that's also cool. She's going to work more because she needs to. But definitely one of the bright spots in NXT. Moving on here, as we get to Theory and Waller. They are the main roster people who lost. I did not think they were necessarily going to win the NXT tag team titles, but I did think it was in play. You know, they held the WWE Tag Team Championships. They won them at WrestleMania. I don't think much came of that reign. They haven't been able to get on PLEs. Don't think it's helped that they've gone to, 5 matches. You know, they seem to be TV programs for people and not, they've been more fodder for other people going onto pay-per-views. Like they battle Theory and Waller along the way. I liked the pairing when they came together. I thought Theory needed it, and I will continue to say Grayson Waller is one of the most comfortable heels out there. He has been able to handle himself with the biggest names, including John Cena. You can throw anything at him, and he'll be ready. I think it has helped him with Theory, and they have teased the breakup on and off, and what had happened already, and they had that again last night. What they're clearly leading to whenever they want to pull this trigger is Austin Theory is going to be a babyface. Now, Austin Theory has been a babyface before. Not in WWE, but when he was in Evolve, he was very much, oh, this guy's got the body for WWE and he's a ready-made babyface. We'll just push him as such. And he had that, and, obviously he's been a heel the entire time, and he's done heel work on the indies too, but there was very much like, oh, there's the guy. And, Gabe Sapolsky pushed him as such and got him discovered by WWE. He was very much the chosen one. That's the guy. And, seemed to be moving in that direction with Vince. And he has been put in those spots multiple times with Austin or Pat McAfee or The Rock or Vince or Jelly Roll. Hey, we need a heel to take care of business the way he's supposed to and eat shit in the end. Home run. Does it every time. It has not elevated him up the card. But if you position him against a very clear and obvious heel in Grayson Waller, it's Theory's best shot in terms of launching him as a babyface. You want to punch Waller in the face. You want to shut him up. Waller could easily tear down Theory in a battle of words. There's plenty of fodder that they have already produced. They just haven't pulled the trigger. They've slow burned this breakup. That was on display again last night. There's probably a conversation of we couldn't even beat the NXT Tag Team Champions because of you. We go down there and we lose. You know how embarrassing that is for me? Because of you? I made that place. I sent Johnny Gargano on his way. All you know about the way was being the dumbass of the four of them. Now, does that elevate Theory? Does that elevate Waller? We would see. We would see how much. They're on pretty consistently. They just don't win enough. They're not bumbling heels, but they don't win enough to be massive threats. And that's just how they're booked. Austin Theory, babyface, is something I think SmackDown should absolutely look to explore right now. And it's probably a sink or swim moment for him. Here you go. And you got to do that with people sometimes. It may not work, or he may find his footing, and all of a sudden it was, oh, okay. Austin Theory is a babyface that people can get behind. Maybe there's something to this. But sometimes you got to try. And I think SmackDown needs that kind of depth right now. Waller's going to be fine. Waller's going to have a Miz-like career. We're going to be able to put him anywhere. Will he ascend to the top of the card? That's up to him. That's up to their booking. But he's very reliable. And I think he's the right situation to see what they might have in Austin Theory as a babyface. But that's for SmackDown. That's for Raw. And as it relates to NXT next week, back in what might be a new look Performance Center. This is when we start to really see when NXT is going to be on CW, when they settle back in, and how quickly do they get back out on the road. They announced the Halloween Havoc wheel returning. Okay. Let's see where everything kind of settles in now. For those that you were watching live, thank you very much. You're a Matt member. You got it live, or you watched after the fact at thewrestlingmatchshow.com. Subscribe for free at thewrestlingmatchshow.com. If you're catching this after and say, wait, I could have watched this live. Yes, you can. You got to be a Matt member, though. Head on over to the membership tab at thewrestlingmatchshow.com. And by the way, if you ever have questions about that, please feel free to reach out to us on social media at WrestlingMatt23 and at The Matt Camp. Head over to ProWrestlingTees.com/The Wrestling Mat. And get your Wrestling Mat merch. Nerdy Dude is watching right now. He put up pictures of his shirts. You can get yours. And if you're a Matt member, you get discounts on that merch. So go check that out as well. Friday, we'll have the Wrestle Dream preview. By the way, you can catch me on Busted Open Radio Friday with Nick Nemeth, the former Dolph Ziggler, and Thunder Rosa from 9 to noon. And I'll also be on, I'm not sure who I'm with, 9 to noon on Saturday and Sunday, but I'll be on Busted Open 9 to noon Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So please go check that out. Please make sure you're subscribed to the Wrestling Match Show here on YouTube, on where you get your podcasts, and consider supporting by becoming a Matt member. We would certainly appreciate that. Nerdy, do one more here, but what if Waller becomes the babyface? How would you book it? Nice segue for Matt Books. Well, we'll save that, because that would be quite a challenge to make Grayson Waller a babyface. Let's see where the story goes before we go that deep on it. But I will be back tomorrow to talk about wrestling even more right here on the Wrestling Mat.